I think hotels are a big spender. They are responsible, but they also use a lot of energy, and they're trying to be as ethical about it as possible. So I think let's begin with Sudhir. Sudhir is an environmental lawyer, and if you know the odd-even formula, that is his doing. So the day that you have to come to office on an Uber, it's his doing. So Sudhir, let's begin.
Good morning, everybody. I, in fact, requested our moderator chair that you allow with me. There is a reason for that. Much like what we saw on the Mother Earth kind of thing, I just want to set some preamble for this entire conference, because I come from a background where I have been practicing sustainability and environmental law for the last 20 years, in much more in isolation for the majority of my journey. And I would say hospitality, restaurants, and all kind of hotel projects have always been something where I have felt that surgical strikes have been done against them in the courts for God knows any new kind of situation, and they were totally ill prepared about it. Most of the time when I have seen it from a different perspective, that the hotels, like most of the other industries, were completely ill prepared about this entire thing. Also because of the fact, because in their own initiative, and I can see we were told initially in the panel by Mr. Sharma very well, that there are so many things you do so nicely, still there is a problem. So what happens, there are two major issues which we are facing in this country. I filed the petition which Bikramjit was talking about in Delhi High Court on air pollution. Now you'll say, how many air pollution petitions are pending in Delhi? So there is a National Green Tribunal which is hearing a lot of air pollution petitions. There is a Supreme Court of India which is hearing a lot of petitions. Then why the Delhi High Court took up a petition on air pollution? So what I did, I filed a petition where I said Ministry of Tourism should be a party. I said, you are talking about an incredible India. You are talking about India being a destination of the world. But tell me, this is a forbidden city. Because when WHO makes a report and says that 10 of the most polluted cities in the world, 4 of them are in India, and the world's most polluted city is Delhi, how do you expect travelers to come to Delhi, whether from Kerala, if it is good for now, or Uttarakhand, or from, for that matter, from US and other places? So this is a huge contradiction. So you are talking about a macro issue where tourism also becomes a very important factor. So the court actually realized it, that I am talking about my right to life and my right to employment. So like schools were shut when parents were wondering that there is a pollution levels were very high in Noida or in Delhi or in Gurgaon, the schools were shut. Similarly, there was this question before the Delhi High Court, shall hotels also be shut? If there is a guarantee that the people who are going to stay in those hotels are going to suffer. So you have two major issues. One is the big issue, what is happening in the entire country, what is happening on the entire planet. And the second is inside, when you talk about energy efficiency, water efficiency, waste disposal. So these are twin issues. So it's almost like a hotel, which a hotel itself has a legal issue, regulatory issue, and you are talking about a particular room where you are sitting in. I'll just take 2 more minutes and tell you that this Delhi High Court petition is something like it has hit very hard a lot of government stakeholders who have realized that your perception is in contradiction of what is happening in the country. You are talking about India being a destination. You are talking about India, this being a heritage city. You are asking for a heritage city tag, but here you can't breathe. You go to most of the embassies, you go to most of the places where foreigners work, you will see they look like electronic shop which has so many air purifiers. So that is the situation you are dealing with in the city. That is one. The second part which I'll say, and I'll talk about that in detail when I get my second opportunity, that whether it is National Green Tribunal, whether it is Supreme Court of India, whether it is high courts across the country, whether it is forest benches, I was involved with a project which is called Himalayan Ski Village. Most of you must have heard about it, which was coming up in Manali, where Ford had invested record money, which was the highest FDI in the history of tourism industry in India. I brought Terry and Indian Institute of Forest Management to do the environmental impact assessment study. That project never took off because there were so many fundamental issues, and they wanted to do sustainability on entirely new level. So what is happening in National Green Tribunal, what is happening in Supreme Court, how the, I would say, Hodge Khas restaurants were stopped, for all those issues. Why the Delhi High Court and the Delhi Pollution Control Committee was talking about closing hotels in Mahipalpur. I'll go into detail about those issues, but you have a bigger thing about the entire perception. And my suggestion is, when you do the advertisement for your hotel, also start questioning when the air will be cleaned up.
So Zubin, I think you should take the mic up first, because your chain is known for responsible hoteliering, and I think ITC does more as far as sustainability and environment is concerned compared to, I mean, you guys are the leaders. So tell me a little bit about responsible hoteliering, what it means to you, and how you go the extra mile beyond what has been stipulated.
I'll just take a few steps back. Actually, what has been talked about here, it's all quite intimidating, and suddenly you feel that what it is that you're doing is hugely inadequate. But the fact still remains is that everything that we do has an impact on our environment. It could be positive, it could be negative. So here's what we did, and we took a cue from the company, which is our parent company, which is now 100 years old, 106 to be precise. And to do business, or to be in the business and to continue to do so, somewhere something has to be right in terms of sustainability. The vision is to continue being in business for the next 100 years. Statistics say that over 80% of businesses that have crossed 100 years do not last for the next 20 years. Somewhere you tend to rest on your laurels, somewhere you tend to get overconfident, or somewhere you just don't become relevant anymore because what you used to do back then is not relevant anymore and the world doesn't need you. So the philosophy of sustainability came in there, and it actually got defined, and the vision was very clear that it's not just economic bottom line that we are looking at. What is it that you're giving back to your country in terms of the social responsibility, and what is it that you're giving back to the environment? So it's the triple bottom line focus: economic, societal, and environmental. And that's where, to some extent, measurements have come in. We all know what the economic bottom line means to all of us and the shareholder. But what is it and how can you measure? Like Sanjay said, how do you measure the other parameters? How do you measure the societal return? How do you measure the the environmental return? So again, certain parameters come into place there and say, what are the issues essentially with the environment? You're talking about carbon footprint, you're talking about water, and you're talking about garbage or waste disposal. And ITC went on this mission to become a company which is water positive, carbon positive, and zero waste, or 100% waste recycling as an organization. And as said earlier, not just for hotels, but across all the businesses. So let's stick to the hotels part of it. So ITC Hotels embarked on this journey about 2008, 2009, when we came up with our first green building, as it were, the green hotel, as it were, the ITC Gardenia in Bangalore. And this was the first and largest green building of its size internationally. We decided, and because unfortunately the guidelines were not that well defined here in India, we turned to the US Green Building Council, who've got a very stringent guidelines for defining green buildings. And the US Green Building Council has what is called the LEED certification, Leadership in Energy Efficiency and Design. There are criteria which are there for new buildings, so therefore there's a new building category and the existing building category. The ITC Green Center in Gurgaon, for those who may have seen it, our hotels division head office, was actually among the first in India to have had a platinum rating. That was an office building, a commercial building, and the ITC Gardenia was then the first building which was in the new building category here in India. The ITC Maurya, that's when we took a cue from that and said, now let's look at the existing building design. Today, the ITC Maurya, in this year, we are embarking on our 40th year of operations. So in the existing building design, there's a separate set of criteria as how is it that you can retrofit an existing building to bring in the technology to again make it an efficient building, and not just from the environmental standpoint, but every aspect of operations. which would impact the environment. And based on the criteria that have been laid down, we have received platinum certifications, and each one of our buildings today, factories that have been and do business with companies that follow sustainable practices, that's when the entire ecosystem starts thinking of that. And it's not just then restricted to that procurement manager whose target is 10% reduction over last year, and he chooses this hotel that he'll do business with based on that. When corporates start thinking, saying we will do business now with companies that are following sustainable practices, we'd be able to get somewhere. That's my thought on that.
Thank you. Rohit, you are in a area general manager, a lot of new hotels coming up, and they're smaller, more modern hotels. Tell me a little bit about how the park looks at sustainability and how it looks at responsible hoteliering.
Thanks. You know, it's actually in our DNA, and just to give you an example that we follow one vision and mission statement, and which talks about the customer, which talks about the product, which talks about the productivity and profitability, and it also talks about the sustainability. And just to give you an example that over a period of time, and since I have taken over, so we have done certain renovations in the hotel. So as a part of it, what we did that we have removed all the bathtubs. So that is something which was taking a lot of water thing, and it was not hygiene also, and in fact that was not as a part of the cost part of it. It is definitely a step towards how we can save more water. And not only this, what we have done, and thereafter we have recently we have relaunched our restaurants, so which is like 50% organic now, and whatever the bathtubs have which we have come out from the rooms are being cleaned, repainted, recycled, and we are using them to do the organic vegetables in that. Like say spinach is done, and so I mean if we have time I can take all of you who are interested to show you around, and it is like really appreciated by a lot of our customers. And we are 50%. The aim is this, that how we can reach to 100%. And what Mr. Sharma mentioned about P&L, yes, that remains the fact. And what you mentioned also, it remains the fact. But yes, what I feel is that yes, we are moving towards that, and at least awareness is there. People are aware. The teams are aware, and they think twice before misusing or using the facilities which has been provided. And at the same time, when the guests are quite knowledgeable about it now, and the process is on. It's an old building. It's not a new hotel as such. So there are guests who give us suggestions in terms of changing the lightings, and those have been definitely accepted, and we are following it up. And in fact, when we get back to them and saying that this is what your suggestion was and we have implemented, so they really feel happy about it. So, well, I think that at the end of it, it's an awareness, and if we can move it forward as a community, the sustenance will come.
Yeah, that is a very important part of being responsible, is to listen to people and do the changes which will make you more sustainable. Now, Punit, you worked with Kempinski for many years. How is it that the EU hotel chain looks at sustainability? How different is it from your year that you worked, your couple of years that you did in India? What was the gap?
Kempinski Hotels obviously stems out of Europe, and we are then comparing two different economies to begin with. We were talking about a developed economy, whereas India being still on the way to development, let's call it. I think the whole approach to things, both from the corporate level as well as from the client side, is different in two countries. On one side, you have, as Zubin mentioned, Sanjay mentioned earlier, and also Anurag started it all, the whole ecosystem has to be in place. When we talk about, let's say, recycling, You know, in Europe, you get fined for putting the wrong colored bottle in the wrong container as a hotel. If you don't process your garbage properly, compact it in the hotel before sending out, you will be fined. And the person collecting it, as Sanjay mentioned, what happens to that garbage, is an authorized person. So there's a whole ecosystem in place from A to Z till it reaches, goes back to the recycling part. And if you take a bottle of plastic water, bottle of water, you can see how many times it has been recycled. It is marked on that plastic itself. So that whole ecosystem is already in place. And whereas we are still not aware, we segregate things at the hotel level. When it leaves the hotel, where is it going? It's probably ending up all together and sold here and there and burnt, thank you very much. The governance is not there. The ecosystem is not in place. So when that is not present, as a hotel, ITC company, as individual hotels, pretty much 99% every hotel does the list that Sanjay highlighted. But we do not control the environment outside our area of responsibility, which is then comes under governance. I mean, one thing is for sure that climate change will not only affect hoteliers or hotels, it's going to affect everybody, non-hoteliers. And that's the approach, brings us back to what Sanjay, I think, also highlighted earlier, is education at a wider level, going into schools, not only public and all those international schools, but also the government schools at grassroots levels outside of key cities where we are represented. If the fire is happening in Punjab, which is affecting Delhi, let's go to the schools in Punjab and let the kids educate their parents and say, Dad, parents, let's not do that. I think until we get into that flow of things, we'll be talking about this a lot. And for once, we could have a surgical strike towards environment rather than only demonetization.
Yeah, that's a very important point, and Sudhir. I was speaking to somebody recently from Pune who does wet garbage recycling, and they do 100% combustible gas out of it. But he says the biggest issue is dealing with the people who are contracted to pick up the garbage because they themselves can't do it because there's a union issue and things like that. So tell me a point of view from the bigger picture, because hoteliers can only be responsible for anything that's happening within the hotel. As they said, the biggest issue is you can't control what happens outside. So everything that you do could again be negated as soon as it leaves the gate. So
I would say,
and as you know, laws don't really mean diddly squat.
Yeah. So I would say that there are two major issues here. I think Sanjay said a very important part, and which is very relieving for me as a person who represents as a responsible officer of the court, because as lawyers we are responsible officers of the court. When he said that if some guest is not happy about a bulb being fused, I don't care if the sunlight is coming. If this is the approach of premier chains is there, then I think we are not able to reach out to those solutions which as people who are interested in sustainability and environmentalism of any kind should be doing. So two things are very, very important here. First is that most of the other verticals of challenges so far as the environment is concerned are following a code, whether it's a infrastructural project, whether it's a road project, whether it's a power sector thing. What they are doing, they are bringing a white paper on best practices. So my suggestion would be that you have these nuggets all over the country. Just heard from Park that they are using the tubs for vegetation. So if we can have a compilation, and Businessworld Hotelier should do that white paper, because this is what we are doing in pharma, medical devices, infrastructure, road, power sector, I would say to a large extent even on air pollution issue, we are going with a white paper or approach paper to the government, to the industry, whosoever is connected with the hotel industry, we should go to them, FICCI, CII, and then go and storm the tourism ministry and other people and look, this is what is something which has to be standardized in the entire country. Now you will have a very good example there from especially I have done a lot of work on wildlife. So I have traveled to more than 200 national park wildlife sanctuaries giving lectures on how to do prosecution of poachers and all these things initially 15 years back. I have seen some amazing 10-15 resorts who who run tourism with help tourism and other kind of things, where they have integrated the communities, they have a nature landscape model, they don't do anything non-organic. So these examples are not aware. They might be popular in Sundarbans, they might be popular in Mahanadi Tiger Reserve, maybe in some in Corbett, but then you have equal number of examples where people are using, they are doing wedding parties in the National Park Wildlife Sanctuary, and then the Supreme Court is stopping. So what is happening? Courts are very concerned today, and very concerned when I'm saying hotels and restaurants are not. This is the worrying part. So one is the segregation of and creating a report, creating a white paper, how park kind of hotels and how ITC kind of hotels are doing something which is going to be very futuristic for the entire globe, not only for India. At the same time, let me also tell you that there are different high courts, the Central Import Committee of the Supreme Court, National Green Tribunal, which is even looking at applications where wood-fired pizzas from the open kitchen are also being now targeted. They are saying that give me a list how much of that is happening, and how much energy is going, and how much of this carbon emission is taking place. These petitions have already gone to the National Green Tribunal. Parallel researches are happening that all these fast food chains, why they are using a particular kind of chemical component or energy component in India, which they are not using in Europe and America. So if you see that this dumping yard approach in India for every major industry is also being questioned by the courts now. And that is something which is new. So, and people are talking, if you can have a demonetization kind of thing in India and people can live with this, then there'll be tougher measures on other verticals, and that should come, maybe from the industry, maybe from the courts, maybe from the government. So are we ready for those kind of things? So I would say, like you just see, there were these Mahipalpur hotels. Now, none of them had pollution control clearances. None of them had DPCC permissions. And all of them were paraded before the National Green Tribunal. They all have hands-up approach. In my 18 years of career, not even a single company I have ever seen, not even a single company which has ever engaged a sound environmental activist, professional, as much as they would be engaging with a financial professional for their term sheet. Now that's the trouble. Because you have a Tata Energy Research Institute, you have a NEERI, you have Indian Institute of Forest Management, but when it comes to really taking those hard decisions, and when you are faced with a court situation, most of the people are always in the hands-up approach. So now all these things, whether it is waste disposal, which again Sanjay said very nicely, how many people do it properly? Let me assure you, there is a study going on for the entire country, which will be going to the National Green Tribunal Principal Bench, where they will be saying that this particular hotel has been disposing it like that. And then how many have their bore wells, and how these bore wells have to be stopped. So each and every issue is now going to the court. The one good part about this country is that you don't need to go for a bank guarantee to file a class action suit. You just can go with a credible evidence on an affidavit, and the courts are willing to take up anything. So the choice is yours. You want to create your own approach paper, be a better than the most of the activists who will come and file cases against you, or you wait that somebody will come and say, oh, all the Hojkhas restaurants now need to have a particular pollution permits, and then follow them maybe out of guilt or whatever.
Okay, my evil twin has already signaled me, so this is the last comments. Let's start with you, Rohit. Your final thoughts about how you can go beyond what is on paper and be a responsible hotelier.
Well, I think that it starts from us, and it's rather starts from your own self. You should have a commitment towards the sustainability, and I'm sure when people will see following you, and they will follow you. So, I personally feel that we are already running short of time, and it's time to wake up and say, I'll do it.
It would actually have made such a difference. I mean, I think even psychologically for all of us. But I'm a hotelier, I'm guilty of being one as well. And we believe that we have to create the environment. We don't allow the natural light to come in. It would have been great. It's soundproof, absolutely. That's the road. Well, can't hear a thing. But it would have been great to have the windows open. Lights could have been on dimmers, but it would have created an entire different ambience. This hall has the luxury of having windows. Not many of us in our banquet halls and hotels have windows. That's just one basic thing. If we could have, or we could utilize or harness that light itself, it would have been fabulous. I'm going to give you examples of what I know best and the organization I know best. Just 60% of our, not just hotels, but this organization, ITC, runs on renewable energy. 60%. We have invested crores, hundreds of crores in windmills across the country, which feed the grid and give electricity back to the hotel. The only thing that you pay is about 1 or 2 rupees for the distribution cost. You're not paying for the electricity at all. Unfortunately, what happens is different states have different laws. The reason why we are 60% or 59% and not 100% is because there's no feasibility. I give you an example of Mumbai. North Mumbai, Reliance Energy, 100% ITC Maratha, 100% wind energy. South Mumbai, BEST, who refused to jump onto the bandwagon of renewable energy because it doesn't make commercial sense for them. The electricity company subsidizes the transport company. Tata Energy has now come in and we are in active negotiation. It's been going on since 2009. Nothing has moved forward. We've been trying to harness hydel energy from Uttarakhand, Himachal, where there are opportunities, but there's no wheeling of electricity between states. How can, sir, we bring in legislation or regulation to allow that to happen from state to state? So that is one. So what do you do when you can't get renewable energy? You create your own. At ITC Maurya, there are 2 large, ugly dishes, antennas. It looks like a dish antenna, but they are solar concentrators in the shape of a dish. The largest that any hotel has installed anywhere in the world. Helps us generate steam and hot water for the entire laundry of the hotel. We don't buy electricity for that. Our generators or whatever else that when we ever need to run it, and heating, boilers run on PNG and not diesel. We use piped natural gas. Delhi is blessed with a good supply of piped natural gas. So that is another opportunity. You have to, like we said, create your own little ecosystem when it is, and then make it a multiplier effect going outside. As far as water is concerned, the consumption of water, yes, consumption of water is always a concern, but to be water positive, you have to give back as well. 100% of our water is recycled, 65% of that is reused again, and what is not reused because we've got excessive, we use it or give it to the ridge across the road, Dholakwa. We do it at home as well. We tell the guest, do not change your sheets, or should we have processes that are so strong that we allow him to have guilt-free indulgence, as it were. So that is something that we talk about when I come back to responsible luxury. Garbage, another thing. We all know, I mean, let me tell you, in India, nothing gets wasted. Paper, plastic, everything. But the question always has been wet garbage. Wet garbage goes to landfills. You go down the Gurgaon, Faridabad road, you have to hold your breath. It used to be such a beautiful drive at one time, and there are other places all over Delhi, I'm sure, and every city has got these landfills. So how do you stop contributing to those landfills? We have the garbage segregation in place. About 8 years back, every hotel had installed organic waste converters, converting the wet garbage into manure, and we end up having a situation where we've got so much manure we don't know what to do with it. We start gifting it to people, and a great PR exercise again. But as of June 2016, we have installed a methane gas plant within the hotel itself. It's not difficult at all. It's easy. Our cafeteria is run on this gas. So again, no PNG used for cooking there. It's methane, which is generated, made bio-urja plant, it's called, within the hotel from the wet garbage. Our engineers were over ambitious. They said 1 ton is the capacity. We can take in 1 ton of wet garbage and create gas, and we can run the whole hotel. But you know what? We've got another problem. We are not able to generate 1 ton of wet waste, which is so encouraging. A hotel which has a banqueting of the size that it does, a hotel that has restaurants the size, we have not been able to go beyond 500 kilos a day of wet garbage. So that's how an example of what you can start doing, create opportunities, create awareness, and take it further, or let the industry and other industries as well take it further. Thank you.
Punit, your last words.
I'll make it short because everything's been said. I think what was said before about the white paper, sharing the best practices within the industry, whether it's a platform over BW or elsewhere. I think like ITC is doing some awesome work that could be shared, adopted by hotel companies. Not only, we're not talking about luxury hotels, we're talking about hotels across the board, restaurants across the board, which can probably, if a restaurant is too small and does not generate enough wet garbage for methane gas, but 10 restaurants from food courts can combine and it becomes a condition in the malls to do that. I think that's one, sharing best practices, because it affects all of us, the result of it. It doesn't confine your climate change to the ITC Maurya, it affects Delhi, period, one. Second, I think education at all levels, not only going into communities as a CSR exercise, but in the areas we operate in, staff for sustainability, for responsible hoteliering or living life, garbage, whatever the case may be. I think that's there. Putting pressure on governance to bring up the stringent ecosystem rules, regulations, execution of those. I think that's very highly recommended, because all the efforts will go to waste if the ecosystem is not in place and the governance is not. So let's handle all those three. I think we should be on the way to a better future.
I'd like to thank all my panelists, and I think some gifts are going to be given. Yes. Yamini's taken over. And thank you, Mr. Arora, for hosting us so graciously.